Looking to buy, sell, or grow your business to position it for a sale? As the owner and managing partner of Sun Acquisitions, Dominic Rinaldi has personally been involved in over 300 M&A transactions. He has seen and done it all, consulting with large and small businesses across a broad range of industries. On M&A Unplugged, he'll interview buyers, sellers, and their advisors about their experiences scaling, selling, and acquiring businesses. On every episode, you will get key learnings, but most importantly, you will be better prepared for your own acquisition or sale. This is M&A Unplugged with your host, Dominic Rinaldi.
M&A Unplugged community, if you've listened to some of the episodes over the last 60 days, you probably picked up on a theme related to sales and marketing. In my several decades of working with small and mid-sized businesses, this is an Achilles heel for far too many business owners. Today, we are being joined by Todd Hockenberry, who runs Top Line Results. Todd is a consultant, advisor, and coach for B2B industrial and manufacturing companies, helping them grow by connecting with their ideal buyers. He is also the co-author of Inbound Organization and is the co-host of the Manufacturing Podcast. Todd, thank you for joining me today on M&A Unplugged.
It is my pleasure to be here, Dominic. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Todd, let's start with if you could give everybody in the M&A Unplugged community a quick backgrounder on yourself, overview, and then we're going to dive into Inbound.
Absolutely. Well, I grew up a Steeler fan in Pennsylvania. Well, I guess that's not that relevant. Maybe we shouldn't maybe talk about football yet, right? But yeah, I went to school in Cleveland, got a chemistry degree, and ended up working for an automotive supplier, and kind of cut my teeth for a bunch of years in the automotive plants and suppliers around the country and the world, and kind of fell in love with manufacturing and industrial work and companies, and was part owner of a manufacturing company for a while. Sold that, and then eventually started my own company, Top Line Results, which we run today. We've been doing this for a little over 11 years. And what we do is really help companies grow. And our big area of focus is around the idea of inbound, which is helping companies get found when their audience is looking. And the ideas of inbound really impact the entire organization. And that was the kind of genesis of the book idea. And what we do is we help companies position and create strategies for growth. And it touches really all aspects of the entire organization.
You know, Todd, as I mentioned in my intro, sales and marketing, two very different things, but sales and marketing are so important to the lifeblood of a company. And so often I go into small, mid-sized companies and find that they're just under-resourced or they don't know how to manage those functions. And the whole environment has changed dramatically. Give us a sense for, what people are having to do today and what inbound really means, to stay competitive in their markets.
Yeah, obviously the last few months, things have changed quite a bit, but the principles are more important and I think more relevant than ever. And the idea is that you as a manufacturer or industrial company tend to be driven oftentimes by product or technology or engineering. The founders tend to be more product focused. You don't see a lot of salespeople or marketing people starting industrial or technology firms. Maybe if you're software, you would, but rarely do you see that. So you usually start with the technology. So right from the beginning, there's a little bit of a bias, I think, towards kind of an internal focus and not an external focus. And inbound is really about taking yourself out of your world and putting yourself in their shoes, looking at the world from their perspective, and then creating products and services and ultimately experiences that are the ones that they want and the ones that they are looking for. And today that's more important than ever because a lot of companies are just really looking to survive and get through this situation and get through the rest of the year and into next year. And you can't just push product or services. You've got to really understand how to put yourself in their shoes and create value from their perspective, which means that you really understand them. You're very human and very approachable, empathetic, and you're really creating marketing and sales experiences that they want to consume. And I'm sure your listeners have heard lots of people talking about all the bad salespeople out there, the traditional used car salesmen or the spammers or the cold callers of the world. And many industrial companies still do those things. They still think those tactics are helpful. And what I often say to business owners is, do you like those tactics? Do you like to be treated that way? And universally they say no. And then I say, well, then why is that the way you go to market? And oftentimes that's enough to get them to start thinking about, I need to really think about this a little differently. It's not just about the product. It's about all the things that go into the product, including my people, the mission of the company, the values of the company, how you package it, how you deal with the financial aspects, the service aspects. Every part of it goes into that experience. And with so many options available today to buyers, they are going to look at that entire experience, and it all wraps up into whether they want to do business with you. And some people talk about that as the brand, customer experiences, call it what you want. It's what people want to see. They want to see and hear from people that understand their business, their issues, and can bring value to the table up front in the marketing process first, and then through sales, and then ultimately through the whole relationship.
So, Todd, how does an owner of a business go about creating, an inbound marketing function so that, people are calling them? Where do they start if they haven't done this before?
Yeah, that's where inbound started, was in the marketing world. Companies like HubSpot and people like David Meerman Scott, if you've ever heard of him, there's lots of people that were kind of around this idea that marketing was broken, and that the idea of spam and cold calling and knocking on doors was becoming less and less important, or less and less effective, because of the internet, because the proliferation of information that people had at their fingertips. Now, just because people have information doesn't mean they have context or know what to do or where to go. So the ultimate idea here is that when people look for help, you're there. Inbound is about being there when they look. So it started out with a lot of online work, obviously, websites, SEO. So you create content, you blog, you promote content out there, optimize it, you promote it with ads, paid ads, or email campaigns, social media, however you want to do it. And then ultimately people would know, or you'd be there when they were looking. And it's really expanded into the idea that it's beyond just websites today. So it's not just your, this is the idea behind the inbound organization. If you don't at least do your marketing in an inbound way, people aren't going to pay attention. So the first place I tell people to look is, I say, look at your website. And is your website about your customers, their issues, their problems from their perspective? Would they recognize themselves if they came on your website? Or is it about you? Is it showing a bunch of pictures of your factory? Hopefully no stock images. Please don't do that. Or is it about your equipment, your machines, your product listing? Is that all it is? If that's all it is, it's not very helpful. So is your website there to really help people understand how to solve problems, or is it there to just push your product? So you've got to, that's where your mindset comes in. Leaders have to change the way they think about their business, and marketing has to think about putting themselves in the buyer's shoes and work their way backwards. And again, the website's kind of the canary in the coal mine for me to look at. That's usually a great place to start. And then you get into the marketing mix. Are you buying leads? Are you paying somebody to make phone calls for you? Do you just go to the same old trade shows? You run the same ads in the same old magazines? You're going to look at that whole mix, and you're going to see if maybe, for example, Instagram is something that would be interesting. And I would bet a lot of your audience would say, wow, Instagram, that's what my college kids do, right? Or my teenagers use Instagram. That's not something for business. Well, I just interviewed somebody on my podcast that is in the welding business, and they have tens of thousands of people that follow their Instagram about welding.
Wow, that's a shocker. I would have never have thought that.
Exactly. Well, most people don't.
Yeah.
Welders are there. And if you start to think about it, lots of welders are independent contractors. They're very
creative.
It's a culture, very creative.
Yeah.
Think about the helmets and what they do with their masks and their helmets. Would they personalize them, right? Tens of thousands of people on Instagram looking at this company, and they sell welding equipment, welding supplies, welding classes. They're everything welding, and they're on Instagram. And they're reaching an audience in a way that their competitors don't. So that doesn't mean that everybody's going to be on Instagram. But the point is, your audience is online somewhere. Go find them. That's the point of inbound. Go find them where they are. Create a community, content, make it interesting, share your story there, and give them things that they want. And then you have the opportunity, you earn the opportunity to have that conversation, or at least earn their attention enough where they might come to your website or take a phone call to be able to talk to your potential buyers. that's the flip of inbound, right? Inbound flips it and says you need to earn, not demand or interrupt to get that initial interest from your buyers.
Yeah, Todd. So you mentioned something in there, related to content, and I attended a webinar probably 2 weeks ago, and it was related to this topic. And one of the things that came up was that you really just can't write blog posts anymore and just put content out there. You really have to separate yourself and become a subject matter expert and create content that really touches your audience in an emotional way. And so how does that play out in the manufacturing and industrial space? I mean, it doesn't seem like a very touchy-feely sort of environment, but how do you create content that evokes, emotion and creates that inbound sort of culture?
Well, I back in the day when we first started doing this with content, you could create blog posts that were just talking about the products, and you could get ranking and you could get interest in industrial niches because there wasn't very much there. So you could be bad at it and have poor content and get some results. But there's less and less niches like that available. Like I just talked about this welding company, they're creating massive amounts of content, and they're reaping the rewards because they're getting the attention from it. So how you create content that stands out is that it's about volume, quality, and then acceleration. You have to create a certain volume of content. You can't just do one blog post a month and just put it on your website and think that's enough. You mentioned a webinar. You could do a webinar. Well, webinar is 45 minutes. You could break it down into 10 2-minute segments. You could then post those on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. You could put them on your LinkedIn. You could have your salespeople put each one of those out once a week for 2 months. You could create a blog post. You could create emails. You could push it out to your social media, right? So you're taking content. There's some volume, quality, and then acceleration. You've got to move it. You've got to get it moving, get some velocity behind it. And it's not just enough to park it on your blog and think that's enough. So, and again, the topics are there. Your audience is in business for a reason. And the simplest way to figure out what to write about or where good content comes from is just think about your buyers, think about your prospects, think about the things they ask you, the problems they have, the things you answer in emails and phone calls all day long. That's content. If they're asking you about it, you're creating content, whether you use it in your marketing or not, it's up to you. Take those conversations, take the things that are interesting to your audience, and then create content around them. Because if somebody's asking you a question on the phone, I guarantee you somebody's typing it into Google in the search. So when they ask that question in Google, you want to be the one they find. So again, content needs to be, there's no expectation that a lot of this content's slick and produced like your product brochures. Real, authentic, real people. Like, go back to my welder guys. It's real welders with tattoos and beards and, look like they just got off a job site. It's real people doing real things. That's what you want to create content for, who you want to create it for, how you want to create it. And ultimately where we're going is your audience will create the content for you. They'll create ratings and reviews. They'll tell your story. They'll talk about how much they like you, and talk on other platforms about how much they like your products or your services. The ultimate in marketing is when you get them talking about you. That's where you want to go.
So I think M&A Unplugged community, Todd just gave us a real nugget. Content can simply be about what your clients are asking you day in and day out. What are the questions that they ask you, your salespeople, your customer service people? These are the issues that they're dealing with, or the things they can't figure out. And those are the things that you should be writing about or doing videos about to create a sense of community and interest and achieve what Todd is talking about, which is people calling you versus you having to do outbounding or going to chase them. Be where your clients are, answer the questions that they have, and they're going to call you. I think that's a really such an important nugget, Todd. So let me shift. Where is the crossover then? Because I think what we're really focusing on here is marketing. How do you get the phone to ring? How do you get people to reach out to you? But So where's the crossover between marketing and sales as it relates to inbound organizations?
Well, you just mentioned one. You talk about the salespeople answering questions, the sales department and the service team hears the issues in the field. That's a great place to start in terms of integrating sales and marketing. Marketing needs to hear those conversations. Marketing should be in the field. They should be on those phone calls and hearing them. Salespeople can record them. Salespeople can forward emails where they're answering questions. They can make sure that they come back from sales meetings and there's a debrief on every one where what were the key questions and key issues that came up in this call or this meeting. They can feed that back to marketing. Again, that's one way that sales and marketing can interact together in a significant way. I think other areas you start to see overlap are targeting, where you're going, who you're helping, and who you're solving problems for the best. Marketing may be doing one thing and think it's one area, and sales may be focused on another. I mean, I'm sure no one in this audience has ever heard a salesperson say, "Oh, we get those leads from marketing, but they're garbage. They're no good. We don't really pay attention to those. We do our thing over here." Nobody's ever heard that, right? Or some version of that. That's what you want to eliminate. You want to align both departments so that marketing is attracting the people that sales wants to attract and vice versa. And then you build accountability between the two. They're both the same. They're parts of the same process. So there's really shouldn't be any real divide. Everybody's in the revenue generation business and the customer satisfaction business. So everybody should be all incentivized for the same thing. So marketing should prime the pump and start the process and drive leads and drive awareness and drive brand recognition and educate the marketplace and create this platform where people are going to be attracted to you. And the salespeople, when the prospects poke their head up or put their hand up and say they're interested, sales takes it into depth. And depending on how complex your sale is, sales handles the rest of the process. So they need to be incentivized the same way. So if your marketing department's a cost and you look at it as a line item that's an expense that you try to reduce every year, but on the sales end, you're going to keep throwing salespeople at the process because you think that's the way you generate revenue, you got a little bit of a disconnect. You want to incentivize marketing the same way you incentivize sales against revenue. If we're not growing, marketing's not doing their job right. They need to be incentivizing differently because they handle different parts of the process, but it's the same outcome. So marketing can't just be compensated based on activity. We did these things. We placed these ads. We prepared for these shows. We did these brochures. They need to be incentivized to say, we're filling the front end of the pipeline that turns into business with the sales team. So you need to build accountability on both ends. So they're both pulling against the same resources. They're both pulling towards the same goals, and they're measured ultimately for the same thing, which is revenue.
Yeah. And I think it's so important that we talk about sales and marketing because you really can't have one without the other. You really need both. And so many people will just really, try to throw salespeople at a problem and not really understand how to market to their clients. You need to soften the ground, pave the runway a little bit. So when your salespeople are out there, people are going to be receptive to them calling or the conversations.
Exactly. If I had $100,000 right now if somebody asked me how would I spend it in a manufacturing company to grow it, I would put it in marketing right now first. I would put it in lead generation, awareness, and getting in front of an audience. Right now, people might be surprised to hear that, but in many industrial and manufacturing sectors, web traffic is going through the roof. We had clients that saw 20 to 30% increase in web traffic in 1 month in April of 2020. Again, it makes sense if you think about it. They're at home. A lot of the sales process now has to go online. There's lots of activity and interest out there. But guess what? If you don't have the presence online, if you don't have content out there, if you're not being inbound and getting found, you're not getting that traffic. The people that created their content before this are the ones that are getting the traffic. So I would invest there because that's something that can return 24/7. It becomes an asset of the company when you create great content that drives eyeballs and traffic because it starts the process. Salespeople, got to have them. I'm a sales guy at heart, so this is not anti-sales at all. Point is, though, that you can create investments for your business to become assets that produce for you 24/7, 365, and never worry about expenses. You don't have to, it becomes this asset, right? I'm a big fan of building marketing assets for companies that can yield results over time. And things like search engine optimization and content that people find, online platforms, good social media connections, a large opt-in email list. These are all things that are marketing assets that companies in the industrial space really should be thinking about building for the long term.
So Todd, let's use an example here. Your typical manufacturing, small to mid-sized manufacturing firm or industrial firm. They know what they know. They do what they do very well, but creating content is not what they do, right? So where could they turn to? How could they go about creating a machine and the volume and consistency that you mentioned earlier? How can a firm like that implement that into their company so it's turnkey?
Well, let me start with an example and I'll work back to that. One of the clients we've worked with for about 10 years now is a fuel additives company. And it's not a big company. It's under $20 million, a nice size company, very well run, family owned, many years. And when we started working with them, they didn't have a blog. They didn't have very much web traffic at all. Nobody was finding them. And fuel additives is kind of a competitive world. You get the STPs of the world, and these companies sponsor NASCAR teams and put their names on football stadiums. So they were playing with some pretty big guys. So we created a content strategy for them where they were doing what we just talked about, where they were answering the questions that they were being asked. They created tons of content on their blog. Multiple people in the company contributed, salespeople, marketing people, owners. And 10 years later, they have over 150,000 people per month read their blog posts about fuel additives, for crying out loud, fuel additives. So they now compete online with the biggest names in that world. And these are multi-billion-dollar companies that my client competes with. Now they're niche, so they go after the niche within that bigger audience. But it can be done. It does take time, but it needs to be consistent. So how you do it is you kind of, everybody thinks of content as, well, I don't like to write. There's very few things scarier to people than a blank sheet of paper and then having to start, right? What do I do? What do I write? So don't. Get those sales emails. Have your salespeople forward them to you. Record sales conversations that you have, or at least have a conversation with the salespeople about that conversation and record it. There's lots of recording softwares that are cheap. You can transcribe content quickly. You can do video. Video is really easy to do. Shoot 2 to 3 minute videos with your prospects, your customers in the field or in their environment, talking about their issues. You can use your phone. You don't need a company to do this for you. There's lots of resources out there to teach you how to do using a good cell phone camera. You can create content it's more than good enough and start the process. But you really need to have a decent website. I'm not talking about spending tens of thousands of dollars for a design. A good solid template that you can buy for sometimes hundreds of dollars will do just fine. Make it clean, put it on a fast platform that's going to load quickly, that's going to be mobilely optimized. 30 to 40%, if not more, searches today are with mobile phones, even for industrial companies, or industrial topics. So you need to be mobilely optimized, and then just start. Pick somewhere to start. I like a blog because it's a good place to create content. A blog post is a web page, so it helps build the authority of your website. It can get found on Google searches. You can promote blog posts through all your social media. Salespeople can share them on LinkedIn. You can link to them in email campaigns. You can even run paid ads if you want at a trade journal or trade publication to drive people to your blog or a particular article. Just start. Blog posts can be short. They can be long. There's people that write blog posts that are literally one sentence. Those have to be really interesting. And other people write them that are 3,000 or 4,000 words. So there's lots of different types of blog posts out there. That's where I'd like to see companies start, because they can start with content they either have or they know that they can create fairly quickly. But it needs to be a strategic initiative where there's some time and resources. A couple other resources people can look to. There's lots of agencies out there that will help you with this. They can tend to be expensive, though they know what they're doing, so just be careful. But there's also tons of contractors out there that are writers or understand how to create content. I've built a network of contractors for my business that I use, and they're very reasonably priced and they're very good. So there's lots of ways to do it without spending a lot of money. But the key is to have the vision and then start taking those steps to actually get going and stay with it. You got to stick with it. It takes some time. But if you're doing it right, you'll start to see results within a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, consistency is so important when it comes to that, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So I'm going to wrap up on the inbound organization stuff. I wanted to switch gears with you in the few minutes that we have left. Any last thoughts on the inbound organization?
Yeah, I think that the key is, I just had a conversation about this morning, so this is really fresh in my mind. What you do and what you are good at and what people want to talk about may not be the same thing. So I was talking to a client this morning that was in the manufacturing area. They were in metal fabrication. And they wanted to talk about metal fabrications. They wanted people that needed metal fabrication services or contract manufacturing. Well, in the conversation, I realized that what their audience really wanted right now was expertise on how to reshore a supply chain. They were going after people who were buying from overseas that wanted to bring their business back to the US, but they weren't talking about that. They were talking about metal fabrication. So once they realized that what they're really doing and what they're really bringing to the table and the problem they're really solving is, how do I help somebody reshore a metal fabrication supply chain? That's not the same as selling metal fabrication services. The client I'm talking to knew it really well, but they weren't talking about it, selling it, or marketing it, right? So to me, that's a fundamentally inbound organization thing, is to really put yourself in the shoes of the people you're talking to and don't assume you understand or know what it is they want. If you don't do anything else, take that away from this conversation, because if you're just selling product, right, you're going to go bang your head against the wall against everybody else that's selling product. Inbound is about positioning so that people are attracted to your expertise and your marketing, your content, whatever you want to call it, and that you put yourself in a position where you're no longer as in a competitive space with everybody else. You now become, in this case, I'm the reshoring of metal fabrication supply chain specialist. That's a different positioning. It's a different conversation than it is, well, do you want my manufacturing, contract manufacturing services? That's a total different conversation.
Great advice. Great advice. So, Todd, in the few minutes we have left, let me switch gears on you. You talk to a lot of manufacturing companies, a lot of owners of industrial businesses. We're in the middle of this crisis right now, this COVID crisis. What do you see happening, and what is your advice just outside of inbound organization, just in general, to manufacturing businesses and industrial businesses that may be listening to this podcast?
Stay optimistic, stay excited about what you do. And I think there's going to be huge opportunities for the companies that can do exactly what I just said, really understand how to provide value and not just a product or a service, and think about their markets a little differently, right? Maybe you're a big industrial distributor that does service for somebody on different components. Have you ever thought about setting up an e-commerce site to sell your stuff, make it easy for people to buy from you? Think about things a little differently. And I believe there's huge opportunities. I think there's certain sectors of the economy are going to be struggling. I live in Orlando, so I think the tourism and travel industry is going to be hurting for a while. But there are other sectors that are going to be strong. Find those and position yourself as you're going to help those companies survive. And the ones that are agile, the companies that stay optimistic and focused on customer outcomes and deliver that, not just products and services, they're going to be the ones that win.
Do you see supply chain coming back to the U.S. in some way?
I think it's anecdotally, I think it's a flood. I hear so many conversations daily now about this topic. And I've got clients that are specifically asking how to do it. I've got clients that are specifically asking how to market to other folks on how they can do it. And I do believe it's going to happen. I know it's happening. It has to happen. The risks are too high moving forward. And
do you think we can do that, given that there's probably going to be more pricing pressure than ever, given the recession, if not worse, that we're about to go through? There's going to be real pricing pressure. Do you think we as a country can bring back supply chain and have it be cost effective for the end users?
Yes, I do. Is that a blanket statement for every possible product? No, it's not. I think there are certain things where they're always going to chase the low wage because they're very wage sensitive and worker sensitive. But I do think automation and AI and augmented reality and a lot of these other technologies are going to accelerate the move back, because you'll start to see more automated supply chains, more automated manufacturing, and those are different jobs. I'm not sure assembly jobs are all coming back, but I think that the quantity of manufactured products overall will come back, will increase, that are coming back to the U.S., but it certainly will be sector dependent, and you just got to know your market, right? I think there's I do see significant opportunities there, but again, I think you're going to see cars being built the way they were 20 years ago with 10,000 people in a car plant. Probably not. It's going to be a lot more robots, a lot more automation, and other advanced manufacturing techniques that maybe reduce those costs. I think there's a lot of variables too, Dominic. Certainly with energy costs is one. There's lots of variables, right?
Right.
But do I think our market will absorb some more cost increases to keep things onshore? Yes, I do. And that's, again, a broad statement, a general one, not specific to every circumstance.
Well, we've certainly seen the collapse of some of these supply chains in this crisis, and people have got to be rethinking, how they can hedge for, something else, another disaster, whether it be natural or not, so that they're not caught off guard.
I agree, and maybe that's the key point, is that if these are mission critical components or parts, will companies absorb that risk of having a supply chain extended around the world? I think the answer to that is there's less and less tolerance for that type of risk. Understood.
Well, Todd, it's been such a pleasure having you on M&A Unplugged. Really appreciate your time and your thoughts. And I think this topic is so important given the changing world. Having clients inbound to you is really a game changer and something that people really need to be focused on. If folks in the M&A Unplugged community wanted to get in touch with you, how could they reach you, Todd?
I'm pretty easy to find, but the easiest place is our website, top-line-results.com, or just search my name on LinkedIn and reach out. Love to connect with people in the industrial world anytime.
All right, Todd. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So M&A Unplugged community, just to highlight a few things that came up that I think are so important. Creating an inbound culture where clients are reaching out to you because you've delivered meaningful content that addresses the issues that they deal with day in, day out can really separate you from the pack. And the other thing that Todd mentioned is you should never be assuming your client has an issue and trying to build products and services around that. You need to talk to them. And then everything else that follows, your product development, your communication, your content should be all around clients' pain points and what they're asking you and what they're saying. And everybody in the organization should be involved in that. Great information. All of today's information will be available in the show notes. If you would like to learn more about the process of acquiring or selling a business, please visit our website at sunacquisitions.com, or feel free to reach out to me at drinaldi@sunacquisitions.com. I look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of the M&A Unplugged podcast. And until then, please remember that scaling, acquiring, or selling a business takes time, preparation, and the proper knowledge.
Thank you for joining us today on M&A Unplugged. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and recommend it wherever you get your podcasts. If you want more great information on how to scale, acquire, or sell a business, please visit our website at sunacquisitions.com.